I made my boss lose a project with $1.2 million worth of funding because I asked for help, and in response, he fired me, but when he tried to replace me, the expert he hired wasn't good enough. My previous workplace was an NGO hired me to do what was deemed an impossible task, reaching to and gaining the support of several groups that are notoriously difficult to recruit. It was a pretty critical point, with over $1.2 million of funding depending on it. Not to brag, but this is something I am actually expert in, one of very few in my country. I got to work, and used some pretty unorthodox methods. Initially management seemed to be fine with it, since it proved extremely effective. Within 8 months, the organization moved from being irrelevant at best, to having a small army of volunteers, active groups and vocal ambassadors, and gained a reputation for being the most radical and interesting player on the scene. The thing is, this success was because I was there to cover for the organization's irrelevance. As long as they don't implement some deeper changes, this is as good as it will get. Except nobody seemed very interested at implementing any deeper changes. In fact, they began doing increasingly more problematic stuff, think public racist comments by staff members, making it harder and harder to maintain the support. I kept raising the alarm that this will not end well, and at some point, this and my less than standard methods annoyed management enough that they decided to fire me. I pointed out to my manager that, if they don't want to lose all of the work, they'll at least have to recruit someone with similar experience, which is going to be very difficult to do. Again, very few experts on this. In response, my manager demanded that I write down a document for my future replacement, and, specifically, that I make it so a person with absolutely zero previous knowledge could understand it. Zero knowledge, you say? All right. I sat down and wrote an extensive document. Which included nothing but the most obvious, basic and offensively unhelpful information. No, you cannot call people slurs. No, not even when they aren't present, phrased as if it was written for a third grader. If they hire someone competent, they won't need that document anyway. If they hire someone clueless, well, they'll probably be able to understand it. I ended my employment there in September, but stayed in touch with some of my former crew. By the end of November, half the volunteers I recruited dropped out. The 200+ people involved in one of the flagship projects just stopped showing up. The assistance network stopped responding altogether. An attempt was made to continue one of the other long-running projects, but since they didn't know how or why it worked, it flopped gloriously and stopped running after one more session. The annual fundraiser I started failed to have any relevance when they attempted to copy it this December, and only 7 people showed up. 3 of the groups decided to exit and operate under a different host, after also going public about the management being both out of touch and abusive. Oh. As of today, it seems like they lost the $1.2 million funding, too. Commenter 1. Wow, talk about manglement. You gotta be seriously out of touch to see a successful project, poison it with bad PR and then fire the expert behind it for raising concerns. Then to have the nerve and ignorance to ask said expert to write a cheat sheet for dummies to handle this huge, complicated and high-stakes project. As if a new hire with a tutorial can replace the expert. Commenter 2. They probably blamed the aftermath on you anyway. It happens often in situations like you described. The organization isn't interested in making systemic changes, it enjoys the benefits of a competent employee's work without even realizing how instrumental that one person is to the success of the operation, then blames the employee when things fall apart after their departure. Update. About a year ago, I wrote a very messy and awkwardly worded post, describing how my old boss had me fired due to being a whistleblower, citing my, very proven, unorthodox methods, among other bogus claims, while demanding that I create a document for my future replacement, and make it so a person with zero knowledge could understand it, which I did. I didn't expect to even write a follow-up, and definitely not this one. I couldn't have come up with this chain of events if I tried. Predictably, as soon as I left the organization, things quickly began to unravel. Projects fell apart. Partnerships I built disintegrated. Volunteers left, some did so in protest. Community engagement, trust and support from target groups pretty much vanished. My replacement was not only completely clueless, but also a non-functional alcoholic, who didn't even want the job. Apparently she was lied to, and drove every single program to the ground. All of which, in turn, alienated donors as well. But that's not all. One of the comments on my old posts suggested I contact IRS, because odds are they would find some fraud going on. Well, you weren't very far off. While I didn't contact any authorities, and generally tried to not escalate anything, I accidentally tipped the manager of the org's biggest funders that something was off. I didn't even realize it until much later. I just ran into him at an event and chatted with him, mentioning that I was fired from the org that December. The manager looked confused. What do you mean? They said you worked there until March, and left on your own. After a bit of a puzzled exchange, I also noted that the crew of one of the flagship programs decided to shut it down a few months earlier. Yeah, the organization reported as if the program is still running. Long story short. The foundation looked into it, and it was not pretty. But wait, there's more. The other biggest funder of the org was a government program. On my very first day at work, I flat out told them this grant was extremely unreliable, and that will last 2 to 3 years at most before the program gets shut down for being too progressive, and that they should prepare a backup for when this inevitably happens. Well, guess how this worked out? And now, for the weirdest plot twist. Ultimately, the CEO decided to jump the sinking and burning ship, and quit, or maybe they got fired? When I saw the open call for CEO, I decided to be a bit of a troll, and apply. It was mostly just for my own amusement, I wasn't expecting to hear back. Both because of my strained relationship with the org, and because, frankly, despite my expertise in my own field, my relevant experience for this kind of position is fairly limited. I just wanted to rub it in a little. I sent my resume and cover letter, and mostly forgot about it. Well, after a couple of months, they called back. Asked me if I'm still interested in the position, and asked for an interview. I thought about it for a few minutes, and decided to politely decline. It was tempting, honestly. But ultimately, I realized I will hate it, and would probably suck at it, too. My skills are in other places, and my heart is in other places as well. I recently decided to take a break from work altogether to focus on my physical and mental health, and while I'm at it, get a master's degree. Best of luck to whoever decides to take that position, they're going to need it. Commenter 1, it's pretty wild how quickly things can unravel when someone who actually knows what they're doing is out of the picture, leaving total chaos in their wake. What do you think in the end caused the foundation to investigate the discrepancies? Commenter 2, you made a right decision by declining their offer. It's nice to take a break for once.